I'm Tracy Osborne, and you're listening to the Daring Woman podcast. Imagine the story of a generation being altered by women who were empowered to live their truth and in turn can empower others to live theirs. It's time to rewrite the narrative. You know, so many of my guests have experienced, most of the guests have experienced trauma. That's kind of the whole point of the show. But some of us have smaller traumas, I guess you could say. Well, some, like one-time incidents. Some of us, it expands most of our lives. Like if you've heard my story now, you know that most of the stuff I've experienced has been kind of ongoing. And my guest today is no different. Teresa Syms has had a lifetime of neglect and abuse and loneliness. And then just when she thought she escaped all that and started a new life, she almost died. So she's coming on today. Teresa, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tracy. It's lovely to be here.
It is exciting to have you here. I'm really looking forward to hearing about your story. But I mean, you've just had, in the car accident, it didn't stop there. It just kind of has kept on going, hasn't it?
Absolutely. It's just been one event after another. And the car accident itself was enough. But then, you deal with the injuries from that. And then people, especially family, not understanding what you're going through because you're not broken. You're not, there's no scars. All soft tissue injury. I had 10 fractured teeth. I had my third severe whiplash and concussion. So no one understood. Oh, you look fine was always their response. What's the matter with you? You're just depressed. Well, no, it goes deeper than that.
Yeah. Well, why don't you take us back a little bit and let's start, before the car accident and tell us a bit about your back history.
Sure. So if you could imagine for a moment that from the moment you were conceived that your family didn't want you, or that from the moment you were born, your family chose to not love you. Well, that's kind of what I grew up with. And considering the fact that I was born crippled with club feet, you would think that they would give me a lot of attention and love and nurturing, but it was exactly the opposite. My parents neglected me, ignored me, abused me. My father's favorite source of punishment when he was drinking heavily was to nail beer bottle caps onto a piece of plywood, pointed side up. And that's what I had to kneel in front of a full-length mirror. So, you're staring at your reflection at 5 years old while your knees are being ripped to pieces. And you're wondering, what on earth did I do wrong? Why do they hate me? All these questions go through your mind. And my sister did like to instigate situations where I would get in trouble with my parents, be punished for, and then she would just love to stand back and watch and smile and laugh because I was being punished. And, growing up in that environment was bad enough, but her favorite words to say to me were, "You're fat and ugly. You're fat and ugly." And that's what I heard from the time before I was 5 years old. And it wasn't until about 4 years ago I was able to silence that voice in my head. So I went from that childhood to grabbing hold of the first person that I could marry to get out of that life. And it turned out it was not much better. I mean, the physical violence started right shortly after we were married, and then that turned into abandonment emotionally, psychological abuse. There was times in our 25-year marriage I was humiliated, I was laughed at, I was corrected constantly. And then my sons learned that behavior from their father and started doing the same thing. So it wasn't a good situation. It wasn't a good life. And until I looked after my grandmother for the last 10 years of her life, and she passed away in 2003, and she was my last link to family. And I felt very alone and abandoned once again. But through her And being with her and spending time with her, I found the courage and the strength that I needed to be able to stand up and say, this is enough. I've had enough.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually took the steps at that point in time to end that marriage. And my children were grown, and I thought, there's nothing here for me. So, I did what I needed to do to redo my working skills, and I went and found a job, and there I met a lovely gentleman who was actually going through the same type of relationship breakdown I was for the same length of time. I mean, he was abused by his spouse, neglected, ignored, humiliated, all those sorts of things. And we became confidants for each other. We became each other's support, and it was friendship, but it was based on trust and the deepest respect and compassion for one another. And in 2006, we got married. And that was about a year after I had graduated college. So I had gone to college for the first time in my life at 45, and did my human resource diploma and got an excellent job from there. And then we were married in 2007 in June, and about 8 months later, through a blinding ice and snowstorm here in southwestern Ontario, I was heading home and actually noticed a pickup truck that was spinning out on the black ice, and it was coming towards me. And that's the point where I thought my life was over. It didn't matter what I had survived, what I had lived through. Any of that didn't matter. I was going to die, and that's what I was screaming out in my head was, I'm going to die, and I'm never going to see my husband again. And why? Because I just found the life and the happiness that I had always craved and knew that was out there for me. And I ended up surviving, obviously, the accident, but was left with post-traumatic stress, quite severe from the driving incident. And, I saw and I heard everything that went on. I wish sometimes I could block those memories out, but there's nothing you can do about that. To a point you can, but I was left, like I say, with a lot of soft tissue injuries from head to foot. I had 10 fractured teeth. I had a brain injury where, I would get dizzy very easily, and I fell down the stairs actually 7 times in my own home because I would spin out at the top of the stairs and just fall, and actually have damaged my spine quite badly because of that. And so left with a lot of chronic injuries, spinal damage, brain trauma. But I decided, that it took me 9 years to feel human again. But, after that, I decided that I needed to do something. I was sitting in my house because I couldn't work anymore outside of the home. And I was feeling not unwanted, but not useful. Like I knew there was something else that I was meant to do. I was put on this earth for a reason. And it took a very long time for me to figure it out, but I realized it was actually to give back, to help other people who have experienced similar things that I've gone through and lived through in my life, to be able to stand up and say, you know what, I'm okay. I can do this. I can get through this. Or look for that shining light at the end of the tunnel, because it is there. All you have to do is find it. And I help people as a transformational life coach now. I actually help people to find that light and strive and set goals for a better future, because none of us were put here to go through a life like I did or like you did. We weren't put on this place, on this planet, to be abused or hurt or anything like that. We all serve a purpose. We all have a purpose. We just don't always know what it is. So through that car accident, when my life flashed actually before my eyes, and I, screamed out inside my head, like, why? Mm-hmm. I actually heard someone speak to me, and I've heard this voice about 4 times in my life, to tell me, you're not finished here yet. And I've heard that voice at the worst possible times in my life, when I attempted suicide as a teenager, when I was being beaten by my parents, And then at this car accident, I heard those words, and, not knowing what that meant, I didn't know how to start looking.
Sure.
But yeah, so I actually always wanted to, my main passions in life since the time I was a child was I wanted to write and I wanted to help other people. So after the 9 years of the car accident later, I decided to start writing my grandmother's story, which I had tried writing many, many times. But something always came up to change things, and I couldn't understand. And I gave up several times. But then there was this voice that, I had to do this. This was the turning point. So I actually wrote my book, A Century of Secrets. And apparently it's quite a powerful book. And I'm honest about it. It's a true story based on my life and 4 generations of my family. And that goes back to the 1800s, where we cover up lies and secrets, and we just magnify the problems by keeping things quiet. So I decided to break the cycle and, talk about what went on, talk about how people are treated. And I'm happy to say that my book has won 2 years in a row International Readers' Favorites Honorable Mention Awards. So that's lovely. It's changed a lot of people's lives. People that have read it from my hometown especially have approached me and said, I understand. I know the doctor that sexually assaulted you because he did it to me too. Things like that. And it's been a worthwhile endeavor. I mean, for me, writing that book was my turning point. It was my healing. And when I completed it, my husband actually watched me and he said, your shoulders dropped about 4 inches. It was like the weight of the world came off of me and I was released. And that's why I think it's so easy for me to talk about what went on in the book, because I got it out of me.
Right.
And it no longer holds a space of owning me. I own the story now. So it has no control over me. So after I completed the book, my coach that I used to help me to publish and write and all that aspect of it, he certifies coaches for a company in the States out of Utah. And he said to me, would you ever consider being a coach? And I said, well, yes, because actually my background was human resources. So helping people is, right there. And so I immediately did that certification. And it's been the most beautiful gift in the world, because now I get to live my life passions by writing and helping other people. And by coaching, I see the transformation that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel it. And it's a genuine, honest feeling. It's the best feeling in the world, not like an ego feeling, but you're actually doing some good because I'm seeing the transformation in the people I help. So
it's a I don't even know what the right words are. I know exactly what you're saying. It's like a soul fulfilling feeling.
Absolutely.
When you're helping somebody, it's like you said, it's not ego. It's you feel it like to your very core.
Yes, absolutely. You feel it right down into your soul.
Exactly.
There's just, people say to me, why can't you be, raw, happy and all that kind of thing that you're helping people? And I'm like, that's not what it's all about. It's more about the person and getting them through whatever it is they're facing and having them come out the other side of whatever it is they're dealing with. And for me, it's not about me. It's about them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You said something early on that I wanted to bring up, and you said, after the car accident and everything, people would say you don't have physical injuries, you're just depressed, you need to get over it. And that seems to be a common thing for a lot of different traumas. Yes. I lost my husband 3 weeks ago yesterday. No, let's say Wednesday, 3 weeks ago Monday.
Oh, I'm
And
so
thank you. And it's been interesting. But so far, luckily, people haven't told me to get over it. But I know it's coming. And I know I know people are telling me, or I'm starting to hear, eventually you're going to move on. And, that kind of thing. And that's moving on is basically the same thing as saying, get over it,
absolutely.
You don't get over anything that's happened to you like that. Like any kind of trauma, your past, my past, the assaults, the beatings, you don't get over it. You learn to move forward despite it, and you kind of grow around it.
Absolutely.
Right?
I agree, Tracy. I was talking with a young lady yesterday, a potential client, but she'd gone through a horrific event in the last year, and people are saying to her, well, you'll move on, you're fine, you just, deal with it and all this sort of thing. Well, no. And I said to her, no one has a right to dictate or tell us when we should be over something that affects us, because that experience is unique to each one of us.
Mm-hmm.
And we process it differently.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a better understanding of it than a person on the outside looking in to say, why would you try to tell me that in 5 months I should be over this? You have no idea how that event affected my body, my soul, my mind. You have to go through a grieving process. I know when I lost my job after that car accident, it was 2 days later, I lost my job. And it was horrible. And no one had a right to tell me, just get on with it, just get over it. I was so injured, I couldn't even hold my head up at the dining room table to have a meal. My neck was deemed a catastrophic injury. And my physiotherapist that was helping me, she's also a chronic pain specialist. And she said to me, imagine a piece of spaghetti trying to hold up a bowling ball. That's what your neck is like. So it's so delicate and fragile, and yet no one understood what I was going through. Everyone kept saying, oh, you're fine. Just, you look great. What's the matter with you? Oh, my children even, Mom, fine. You're fine. Just get over it. Because I had been, for my first marriage, we were on a farm and I was doing a lot of the heavy lifting, the work, all that sort of thing. And to all of a sudden not be able to look down at my dinner plate without pain and, all that sort of thing, it was horrendous for me. And then, not having any understanding or compassion from anyone other than my husband, who was my caregiver, it's the worst thing going. But we process. We have to go through that grieving process in order to come out the other side of all of this.
Yes. And so, what I really want to make clear for people who are listening is, number one, like you said, nobody has the right to dictate your healing. They don't have the right to dictate how you heal, how you feel as you're healing, the timeline, none of it. It's very unique to each one of us. And how I heal from losing my husband is very different from how somebody else is going to heal from losing their spouse.
Exactly.
But and on the flip side, when you find yourselves in those situations where you need to give comfort to somebody else, keep that in mind. Phrases such as, you're strong, you'll get through this, you'll move on, you'll meet somebody else, whatever. They feel like they're comforting phrases, but they're actually very hurtful phrases for the person that is actually going through the trauma.
I agree. It's very damaging.
Yes.
If they would keep their judgments quiet just be there to support you as a family member or friend or spouse or whatever the case may be. Be there to support you, help you through it. If they see that you're getting severely depressed, then it's time to stand up and say, okay, look, come with me. Let's go see someone. But,
Sure.
you know, I had actually lost friendships, and my children treated me differently afterward too, because they didn't understand, and they chose not to understand what I was going through. So that's the thing. You know, we have the choice of who we're going to allow in our lives to help us and who we're not going to allow. And
Right.
as part of the healing process, you know, you need to have positivity around you and comfort and compassion. So those that are there to help you, you'll know the difference. By someone saying, get over it, or it's 5 months, you should be fine by now. That person doesn't understand what you're going through. So maybe they're not the best choice to have in your life at this point in time.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, and it's okay to feel however you're feeling. I've had moments where I feel like, okay, this is done, this is over with, this is my new reality. Let's just plunker through, and you know, I'll be feeling great and having a fantastic day. And then all of a sudden, the light switch hits and I'm bawling my eyes out, right? And that's okay. That's my process. Some people, you know, going through, you know, I'm going to talk about grief since that's the most common one or the most current one for me right now. But you know, some people hold on to their loved ones' things for years. 2 days after I came home from the hospital, I cleaned out his closet and bagged everything up, minus a couple of shirts that I did keep. But you know, I completely rearranged my bedroom. I bought a new comforter and bedding, and that was something that I had to do for my healing. I could not, you know, I spend a lot of time in my bedroom because that's where my office is, and I could not function in this room completely surrounded by my husband.
Yeah, I could understand that. That's probably the best thing that you could have done for yourself, but you're the only one that could have made that decision. No one could have told you to, you know, look, Tracy, I think you need to go home and clean your room, change everything. Had someone told you that and you weren't in a position to be able to emotionally do that, that could have been very damaging. Absolutely.
So you know, we just have to be mindful of how we comfort people. And the sad thing is most people are coming from a place of meaning well, and they just don't quite know how to do it properly. You know, the people that are telling you, it's been 5 months. You should be fine by now. You know, why aren't you moving past this? I don't, you know, I'm sure that a lot of them weren't trying to be mean. They probably just didn't understand, and maybe they were worried that you're wallowing, you know?
Exactly. And, you know, they haven't been through this type of thing in a lot of cases too. So they're just going by what they think should happen. But, and we need to appreciate that they are trying to help us. However, you know, my car accident was 12 years ago. And last Thursday, I was a passenger in a vehicle, and my post-traumatic stress for driving was triggered 3 times in one drive. And it was the most horrific thing. And you never know when it's going to hit. You never know how severe it's going to hit. I was trusting the person I was driving with. And when it was triggered, I actually put my hand up in front of the steering wheel, or excuse me, in front of the windshield, so that I didn't see what was happening. And the person didn't understand what was going on, and I didn't want to scream out, or I didn't want to say, but I absolutely could not look at what was going on because the vehicle had come too close, and that's my big trigger. So, you know, I needed to say to myself, instead of inhaling when something like that happens, because that's absolutely taking the energy into your body and storing it there, you know, when you go, that's the worst thing to do because that holds the energy in your body. So if you exhale, force the air out of your body, it can't take it in. So then you just tell yourself, oh, I'm okay. I'm fine. See, I'm here. Everything is fine. And that's how I got through that hour-and-a-half drive. And, person means well. They just don't understand the severity of post-traumatic stress sometimes.
Right.
And, that's not her journey per se. That's my journey. But all I can do is educate.
Right. Exactly. Well, Teresa, this has been fantastic getting to know you and hearing your story and hearing that, it's okay to feel how we're feeling. And it's okay to kind of be selfish on our healing journeys. And you have to be.
I would agree. It's totally, you need to look after yourself first.
Right.
Because you are the only one that can control your happiness, your capability to love, to live a good life. Mm-hmm. So you are the only one that has control over that. You can't expect someone else to make you happy. So there's all those self-loves, like self-compassion, self-love, self-care. We need to practice all of that so that we can be the best we can be, because we're all worth it.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Oh, well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really, really have enjoyed speaking with you.
Thank you, Tracy. I really enjoyed it as well. And I hope it's meaningful to your listeners as well.
Oh, I'm sure it will be. I'm sure there is, at least one woman out there listening going, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I needed to hear today. So
perfect.
That's kind of the whole point. And ladies who are listening, thank you as always for tuning in. We will definitely talk to you next week on the show.